success stories told by the people who live them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the hit streak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder, and today in the Hit Lab with me, I've got an extra special treat for you. I have a true American Patriot, an Eagle Scout, a combat veteran, a businessman, and the host of the Fear Not Do Right podcast, the one and only Cade Lamb. What's happening, baby?
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to be out here in Nashville, Tennessee. This is actually my first time actually stopping in Nashville and taking the view in. It's pretty exciting.
The pleasure is all ours, man. Welcome.
Thank you.
So when did you get in?
About an hour ago.
About an hour ago. So you hadn't even had a chance to take in the sights yet.
I drove around a little bit, but I got some plans this afternoon. You know, gotta go get some eats. There's a lot of guys over at Fort Bragg who, you know, everyone's from everywhere when you're in the military, and Fort Bragg is the center of the universe, allegedly. And
that's what they say.
That's what they say. And so guys are all, I have buddies who I can hit up, and I'm like, hey man, where's the best place to go in Nashville that's not Broadway? That's not going to be, you know, littered with the inebriated at, I'm guessing, any hour of the day. So
it's 24/7. It's an awesome party down there. It's a good time full of they call it Bachelorette Central, right? So if that sways you in any way.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's quite my scene, but I'm definitely here for the music too.
Heck yeah, well, there's plenty of that too, and it's good. Everybody's good down there, man. So you might enjoy that. But I'll hook you up with some spots to go. How about that?
Sounds great.
So you come as and you are the son of a former guest, the one and only American Sheriff Mark Lamb, right?
Yeah, that's the old man.
So, well, that's really cool, first of all. And I met your beautiful mother when I saw them last week in Arizona. Holy cow, your dad can sell.
Yeah, he is very, very skilled at that. I mean, not only did he sell himself to my mom and get her to marry him, but you know, my entire life he's been just doing he's always selling. Whether that was his own personal businesses, whether that was his candidacy as the sheriff, whether that's all these different initiatives that he's got going on right now as the sheriff with Protect America Now, the American Sheriff Foundation, the American Sheriff Network. He helps me out with Fear Not Do Right. He's always selling, and what I think is the coolest thing is he's never selling for himself. He's always selling for someone else's benefit. So it's not like he's going to be like, oh, hey, I'm trying to cut a fat hog here. Like that's the thing. He's never trying to cut a fat hog.
Yeah.
He's always, hey, I've got a buddy over here who he can benefit from this. We're going to make it happen. And at every single opportunity, he's Johnny on the spot, almost jumping, you know, he always jumps head first at every opportunity.
That's right. He's definitely a go-getter, and man, I just loved every second that I've had with him so far. It was so cool, man. He's such a positive dude.
Yeah,
and that's rare when you're in the position that you're in, when you deal with a lot of just bad things every day, to stay positive like that. It really shows the strength of the mind, you know.
Well, I think it's the same way that ice cream is sweet because broccoli is not as sweet. When you have to have that contrast in things when you're experiencing, and especially in law enforcement like he does, and especially on the political side of law enforcement as he does, where you're dealing with the nastiest of the nastiest on the streets every day, and then you have to turn around and spin that story. You have to present it to the media. You have to present it to the people, because that's who he responds to. And when you have that dichotomy of the worst of the worst, yeah, it's easy to get sucked into that. And a lot, especially nowadays, that's what everybody eats up all day, every day, is the reality TV show of life. Things just aren't cinematic enough for anybody anymore. So it has to be darker. It has to be drearier. It has to be more intense.
That's right.
And more gross. I think it's easier almost to see that silver lining and what the good is.
That's right. Dude, it does stand out more because like it is easier to spot. And I'm always saying, I've said this on time multiple times, there's two sides to the news, right? And there's good news. And that's the part that gets me excited. I love those. You know what I mean? Good news is good. And but you got to kind of look for that or know where your sources are. But it does stand out like a sore thumb, man.
Absolutely. Well, it's like when you buy a new car. It's like you buy a new car and then all of a sudden you're like, geez, everybody's got the same freaking car driving around. I thought I was unique and special over here with my brand new vehicle, but turns you start seeing it everywhere, and it just comes to the forefront of your mind. And I think it's, in addition to having that contrast of what's bad and what's good, it's also that muscle conditioning, where you're training yourself. Okay, like, yeah, I'm seeing all the bad stuff, whatever, but how am I seeing the good? How am I seeing the good? How am I processing it, and how am I internalizing it and making that the focus?
Wow. Well, man, like, kudos to your folks. I'm raising kids. It's not easy by any means. It's the greatest gift that I think that God gives us on this earth as a kid, as a child, and mine have made me better people. Like, you're 25 years old, bro, and like they did an outstanding job raising you, bro.
I'll let them know that.
Absolutely. So, well, let's. So first of all, for those that are watching the feed, I've got a second hat next to my show sponsor AVLX right here. That's the Fear Not Do Right cap, right? That's the logo of your podcast, right?
Yeah. So the Fear Not Do Right brand actually we started that about 5 years ago. And we had this mantra that we've always kind of tried to embody, that, and it's just that: fear not, do right. All right? If you're doing the right thing,
what's there to be scared of?
What's there to be scared of? Things are going to work out. And so we thought it'd be cool to throw it on some T-shirts, and hey, why not make an LLC and just kind of have it in the back pocket in case anything happens. And then it wasn't until recently, as I was transitioning out of the Army, that the opportunity came up, and Fear Not Do Right was the perfect vehicle to kind of do a new thing. And so, as we've had that company in the pocket the last few years, it's really starting to take off, and it's just been awesome to see the embrace that people have had with it, where it's just like, because you know how it is when you start any sort of business, or when you really start putting your weight behind it. You're pretty vulnerable. You're pretty exposed.
Absolutely. And
it is with any project, any artist, any businessman, any person who produces anything. You're putting your heart on your sleeve. You're putting yourself out there, and everyone's always scared of rejection. Everyone's always scared to, everyone's scared to fail.
Yeah.
And so it's been super hope inspiring to me, and super humbling to have the embrace that people have had the support. Not just for the brand, but for the podcast as well. It's been amazing.
That's right. Well, it's, doing right is always the right thing.
Yeah.
It has to be. That's why I call it doing right, right? So there's nothing to be scared of when you're doing that. And it took me a while I remember the first time we started putting out content, like other than just still photos. And even then, people would not like certain things. I mean, you can Google Jesus Christ right now. There's going to be bad reviews, and he picked a group of guys, and one of those was bad, right? So that's kind of like the lessons in life. There's always going to be those things. And the people that what I've learned is the people that are throwing out that hate or that shade, it's just that it's an issue they have with themselves. Right. And you know what, dude, the universe, you're putting out vibrations, and it's going to send it right back too, man. Like, so that's the thing, is like, when you do good things, usually good things come back to you
every single time. I think I've seen that the most in the last 6 months, where the Army is a institution,
yes,
in the United States of America that it has done a lot of good things. It continues to do a lot of good things. And there are Americans that are benefited by the programs, the regimentation, just the experience of being a soldier in the Army.
Yeah.
However, there are a lot of cultural things and lifestyle things that just they can be difficult for a lot of people.
That's right.
It's just a different way of living. It's a lot more intense. You're, especially in my slice of the Army, it's very, in the airborne infantry is very kind of dark and morbid, and bullying definitely works. A lot of bullying happen in the best way. We're trying to make each other better, but you don't have a lot of support in emotionally sometimes, and we have a lot of guys at Fort Bragg that are just turning up dead. You don't even know what's going on, and
wow,
it's just such a dramatic reality. And to see the contrast from putting out being there and then starting to transition out, and being able to like we talked about that, seeing that difference, and being able to focus on what that silver lining looks like, and being able to put those good vibrations out, and having that community, having that network start to gravitate towards that and reciprocate that good energy.
Absolutely. Well, even in sports, your coaches are going to if they're riding you, then that means they know that you got more. They're digging for it. It means they expect more, and that's a good thing. When they're not riding you anymore, that's bad, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing they're doing is they're preparing you for what's coming. So as a parent, you'll learn this one day. When my son was first born, they're starting to walk, and you don't want them to fall, right? So you try to catch them and things like that. But what I learned is like now he's 13. He's out there. He spends more time on his own than he did 10 years ago, and he's going to fall. My job is to make him get back up, to teach him to get back up. Nobody's undefeated in this lifetime. You're always going to get knocked down. So I'm not there to keep him from getting knocked down. I'm there to make sure he gets up, and he keeps on getting up and keeps on getting up and keeps on getting up. And that's what the greatest coaches in the world are doing. And that's what they're doing to you guys is if something bad happens and you end up in enemy territory and they're in charge of what's happening next, you got to be prepared for what's coming.
Well, in the most extreme sense of literally falling down, we throw each other out of airplanes.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And then when we get on the ground, you're not just in your little group of guys. You have to make that group of guys. We call it LGAPs, little groups of paratroopers.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I like that.
And so when you jump, you got your 6 seconds, about 2 minutes to hit the ground, and you don't just lightly hit the ground like if you were to go skydiving at some recreational place.
I did that. It is super nice when they land on your booty. And
yeah, no, you're falling at about 14 to 18 feet per second, and you usually smack your head pretty good. There's a method to, a proper parachute landing fall, but it's never quite right.
Right.
I can't tell you how. Well, I can tell you there's about 4 jumps that I really don't remember, but I remember the next day oh, hey, I'm still in uniform and I'm all scuffed up. I must have jumped yesterday.
Yep.
But when you get on the ground, and most of the time we're jumping at night, we're jumping into, the idea of the airborne was created to jump into enemy territory and be completely surrounded. And when you jump out of the plane, you're on your own. Mm-hmm. You have different guys and different chocks and different sticks on different planes. And when you get on that drop zone, when you get on the ground, you have to figure it out. You have a mission, you have a assembly area, and you got to be able to get there, and you got to be able to get the job done. And so you form these little groups of paratroopers where you find 4 or 5 guys on the drop zone, and you just go out and get after it. You go. It doesn't matter what your mission is. You guys figure it out. You guys get to where all the other people are, and then, or if you can't, you fight your way there.
Well, let me, on behalf of all of our listeners and everything else, thank you for your service, man. And I mean that as a matter of fact, you got a glass over there. Let's raise a glass to everybody that's made the sacrifice or served and anything else, right? Cheers, man. Cheers. Thank you guys for everything that you do. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you for being a good American. That's what we care about.
Well, I get the opportunity to do that, right? So because of what you guys have done. So thank you for that, man. It means a lot. So let's talk about growing up in your house, right? So your dad wasn't always in an elected official.
No.
Right? He wasn't always in law enforcement. He was a businessman before that, right?
I think he's always been a businessman. Even when he first got into law enforcement, and especially now since he's become sheriff, he's never taken it as a, well, this is my job. He's always taken it as a, this is my opportunity to do X, Y, and Z. And so, you know, when I was very young, he was, you know, I guess my age, and just figuring it out. We were talking about it the other day, and he was like, yeah, I was 28 when I bought my first house, and I had 3 kids, and that all fell apart. And he, you know, he's a little bit ahead of me on the, you know, getting a family together side of things. But when I was very young, I felt like he kind of just did odd jobs. Not necessarily odd jobs, but at one time he was landscaping, and then he would do pest control, pigeon control, all that. I remember going to work with him a few times, and, you know, he'd reach in these little pigeonholes in houses and, you know, be taking care of pigeons. You got hot feet, you got the spikes all over the place. And it was always hard labor. And, you know, out in Arizona, it's unforgiving, to say the least, especially
even when it rains, dude. It rains like sideways and like 70-mile-an-hour winds. They call them that. They were like, it's monsoon season. I'm like, what does that mean? I saw it.
Oh yeah,
it's a monsoon.
Oh yeah, and they'll come out of nowhere too. And it's just, and it's not, it doesn't. Sometimes it's all night. Sometimes it's like 10 minutes, and it's just, you're soaked. But, you know, when you're up on the roofs doing whatever it is, I mean, just working outside at all is just, it can be brutal. And so he never failed to take an opportunity to be proactive and to be productive. And that always just kind of evolved into the next thing. And some of the time it would fall apart, but every single time it was just like, oh, well, we're just going to regroup and get onto the next opportunity. And it wasn't until I think I was, let's see, he's 50 now, he's 34, 16 years ago. So I was like 8, 9. I think I was 9. We had just moved to a new house, and he had that opportunity to go be a cop, and that it was super cool for me because, you know, a lot of kids grow up with like Hot Wheels, or they're into trucks, or you know, they like I don't even know what kids like anymore. They like the Coco Melon or whatever.
My daughter loves Coco Melon.
For me, my dad raised me up with G.I. Joes. Yeah, man. Kind of, you know, foreshadowing there, but big G.I. Joe. You know, I had all the old 80s cartoons and all the dudes, and he probably would be embarrassed if I said this, but he's actually got a Tupperware box in his closet of a bunch of like old school G.I. Joe guys that he still holds on to.
That's awesome.
But when he became a cop, it was super cool because it was like he had cool guns. It was like he brought home a Glock. Yeah. Dude, that was awesome.
That's right.
And then to see him go through the academy, and I mean, the work that was, and I was just starting to get old enough to recognize what he was doing, and coming home every night, just smashing on these reports, cleaning his gun, doing drills, you know, working through the stuff. And it paid off. He was very successful. He was the valedictorian of his class, and then went on to be Rookie of the Year, Officer of the Year, Detective of the Year. And it was cool to see that progression, especially as he got into SWAT. Because again, I grew up with G.I. Joes, and then when he brings home these cool guns, all the cop gear, the belt, when he brought home that AR, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is legit. Yeah. And this is even like nowadays, where it's like, you know, this is 15 years ago. If you had just an Armalite rifle, it was awesome. Didn't matter what you had on it. Didn't matter what it looked like. Yep. It was so cool. Social media has kind of ruined that. Sure. You know, aesthetically. Yeah, man. And I'm part of the problem. I can't tell you how much money I've spent on bougie rifles, but
there's nothing wrong with a hobby, bro.
Well, there's nothing wrong with one hobby. I have like 15 hobbies that all. Yeah, man. But yeah, he as he was a cop out there, it was just super cool to see him, and then hearing the stories too. When we
dude, he was on TV.
Well, this was before. Yeah. Back when he was at the Salt River Indian Reservation, and he was doing the gangs and drugs stuff, big on the gangs and drugs stuff. And he actually worked with our neighbor who lived right across the street, went to church with us and stuff. And there was actually like 4 or 5 guys that all lived in our neighborhood. They come over for all the UFC fights whenever, you know, every 2 weeks or every month or whatever it was, we'd have. and they would all talk work, and I would hear some of these stories and about like, his jail chief right now, Matt Hedrick, like knocking a guy out in one punch and putting him in a hospital, and like chasing down these Indians on the res, and like dogs coming after him, and all these like high speed stories. I'm like, dude, this is my dad's doing this, you know, like they're hitting warrants and doing all, it was high speed. And
your mom had to be a nervous wreck during some of this.
Probably, but I mean, it honestly probably wasn't any more dangerous than having to, climb ladders up on roofs, ladders up on top of, ladders on ladders, getting after pest control and doing anything like that. And it's rough work.
So once he got on, when did he get on television?
So it's been interesting. The last 2 months has been my first real exposure to him being Sheriff Lamb.
Okay.
So he switched from Salt River over to Pinal County as a deputy and did that for 2 years, and then he left. And I was in high school at the time, and he started building businesses, built a couple businesses, started making money so that he could campaign. Well, I left on a mission for my church in 2015, and he ran in 2016. So right as I left, he started campaigning, and I've been gone pretty much ever since then. And I've been able to see, the clips from TV, the 60 Days In, the live PD, and I've heard all the stuff. And like, I hear my parents talk about how crazy busy they are, but I've only been home for no more than 2 weeks at a time for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
Because I was gone for 2 years on a mission, and then I came home from my mission, and then about 6 to 8 weeks after that, I was at the Fort Benning School for Wayward Boys.
Yep. So when did you know that obviously with the G.I. Joe figurines and everything else, I was a fan when I was a kid too. What did you dream of going into the armed forces, or when did you hear that calling?
I was probably like 14.
Okay.
And I think one of the big ones for me was Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn.
Okay.
Where, you got Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen and all these kids out there with AKs just busting up Russians. And I was 13, and I had told my dad, I was like, hey, I want an AK-47. He's like, cool. Well, at the time he was homeschooling me in middle school. It was just wasn't a good middle school, and having some problems there with the teachers and stuff, and my dad just didn't like it. And so he's like, cool, I'm going to homeschool you. And what that looked like was doing landscaping jobs. Like, hey, you're going to learn math by figuring out how to do these landscaping jobs. I'm going to show you how to do everything, but like, you're going to do it, and then you're going to make a little bit of money, and
that's right.
Learn how to balance a budget a little bit and do all this stuff. And I did these landscaping jobs and saved up and bought an AK-47 when I was like 13, 14.
Wow.
And I still got it. It's my baby, right?
That's right. It's kind of like a kid gets his first guitar, they never sell it, right? Mm-hmm. You keep your first one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so I was always kind of, I knew that I wanted to be one of two things when I was like 13, 14. I knew I wanted to be a MMA fighter or a Green Beret. That was my dream. That was my goal.
All right.
I was watching these movies, and at the time too, it was like super hyped for the Navy SEALs. All these movies were coming out. You had American Sniper. I think I actually I campaigned and got that approved for the reading list in my high school English class.
Okay.
So we actually read that as a class, Chris Kyle's book.
Wow, that's cool.
But there was a lot of hype for these special operations guys at the time, and it was still relatively fresh.
Right.
People knew about Green Berets, people knew about Navy SEALs, but it was at that time around 2008, 2009 where it was the second surge, and all of these guys were starting to get out, and these stories were starting to come out as well.
Okay.
Where you're hearing about what these guys are doing in the GWAT, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is cool too. And I'm seeing what these guys are doing. So I was looking at, I was like, well, do I want to go to the Navy and be like, I want to be a SEAL, do that hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I started looking around at what the jobs had to offer. And I determined that I wanted to be a Green Beret. I wanted to be Special Forces. And so I kind of would do what I normally do as a kid. I played sports in high school. I did a little bit of MMA fighting. And
What sports did you play?
I played football. I was a defensive end and outside linebacker.
I bet you were.
Yeah. And then at the same time, I did MMA as well.
Okay.
So I also did musical theater too.
Well, all right. That's really cool. So that's well-rounded, first of all. I was a musician and an athlete as well. Talk to me about some of the lessons that you learned in all three, football, MMA, and in the arts, that you were able to take with you and apply. So look, most people don't become like a pastor because it's a hobby of theirs. It's something you're called to do, right? It's something it's deep within you, and you just know that that's what you got to do. And I'm sure there's been some people that are like, let me just try being a cop. Let me try. I don't know what else to do, so I just join the Army, for a paycheck, whatever. And then they get in and they know right immediately with the first, they get slapped in the face, knocked down the first time. It's like, yeah, that ain't for me type thing, right? So what were some of the things that you learned that kind of prepared you? Because, my wife's nephew just graduated high school, and this is what he wants to do, you know what I mean? So, like, this is something that could be directed right at him. What's some of the things you learned in school? Because maybe these kids don't see the value in the school and how they can apply that. What's some things you learned, football, MMA, and in the arts, that you were able to apply in the armed forces?
Well, all of them taught me how to suck.
Okay.
They all taught me how to endure hard things. So I went to Queen Creek High School, and at the time, I don't know if they're still as hot as they were back in the day, but I think we were ranked number 26 in the nation when I was a sophomore, and then as a junior and senior, we were right up there playing with the most elite high school football teams in the country, and especially in the state.
Right.
And there was a lot of competition, and there was a lot of wins, and it was really fun. But then the losses came really hard as well. They took their football program very seriously, and we would spend a week during every summer up in Joe City, Arizona. It's like north of Holbrook on the Indian Reservation. Tiny town. If you wanted to run away, it's like that Louis Zachar book, Holes.
Okay.
Like, if you wanted to run away, like, go ahead, run away. You're just going to die in the desert.
Right.
And so we'd go up for a week, and they would just pound us for a week, just and you would be forced to work as a team in cohesion. The entire football program, freshmen, JV, varsity, everybody had to be a cohesive unit at football camp.
That's strong.
Everybody was sleeping in the gym on air mattresses and sleeping bags. It was 4 a.m. wake ups. Like, it was hardcore. We were doing 3 days with weightlifting, and it was hot, and you're just getting after it with all these dudes, and you're competing against each other and just grinding it out. And I think that was one thing that made a very successful football program. But what was hard was being good. I'm like, my dad's an athlete. I'm an athlete. My brothers are athletes. But being an athlete, getting there, and still not being a starter, still not getting the spot, and still having to just really compete after it, and having some of those disappointments and failures really sucked. But having that commitment to the team and having that commitment to what you had done already. I'd gone to football camp, and it sucked, and there was no way that I was going to quit halfway through the season because I wasn't starting, or be all boo-boo and butthurt about it because practices were hard, and I was a scout team all-star. Right. Like, yeah, it sucked, but there was such pride that I had in being able to represent my school and being one of those tough, it's how football players are. You were like, football players and wrestlers have this mentality where you're like, you walk around the school and you're like, yeah, I could beat that guy up. And most of them probably had never been in a fight in their entire life, but
that's right.
That taught me a lot about the teamwork aspect of things. And then on the MMA side was really fun because I started to see success that was 100% dependent upon me, where all the work that I put in was what I got out of it.
Okay.
As long as I was hitting the gym, as I was working on my conditioning, as I was working on my technique, I primarily focused on boxing with jiu-jitsu. And then we had some Muay Thai coaches at the gym I went to, and that helped me just do some defensive stuff. And having to compete against those guys and being a bigger kid, I was 16 and sparring with grown men, you kind of get your bell rung a little bit and you learn very fast what, getting punched in the face feels like.
Yeah.
And getting punched hard, like, not quite knocked out, but you're seeing stars. And being able to see the success from putting in personal work and that sweat equity. That was a big one for me. And it was also a part of that, that whole time I had this mentality that I was like, I'm just prepping my brain right now for the suck. Because when one day I'm gonna be like on that Surviving the Cut documentary that they did about that Navy SEAL class.
Yeah. Oh
man, I watched that and I was like, dude, they're like doing those flutter kicks and carrying the boats, and I'm like at football camp and I'm doing up downs, or I'm in at my MMA gym and doing like a Shark Tank or something like that, and just wanting to about to kill over, but pushing myself because I'm like, oh yeah, this is eye on the prize right here.
Well, it's crazy, man, because like the limits that each person has, that person actually set those. Nobody else set those limits for you but you, right? And a great leader will push those limits because, like, if we're just talking weight, something that you lifted heavy, right? Well, what's heavy to you is only heavy until you lift something heavier, you pick up something heavier, and then it's what was heavy is not as heavy anymore, right? Just like enduring any type of pain or whatever it may be. So those leaders, the great leaders, will push you to overcome things, and and pressure. You find out what you're made of, because pressure bursts pipes, but that same pressure can also make diamonds. Pressure causes some men to break, and it also causes some men to break records, right? So it's how you deal with those things and how you withstand those. And unfortunately, a lot of the times when you have to endure something or grow, it's not always by choice, it's by force. Something happened to you right then, like, in business, it's that way. With raising kids, it's 100% that way, because you don't know what in the heck they're about to do. And then it's your job to, that comes with pressure, man. It's like, this is a human being that's a reflection of me, and I want the best for them, and I don't want them to hurt, but I want them to grow. And I want, like, my greatest fear is that my kids, won't have enough money to survive and thrive like they can. I know I struggle with that in my 20s and even part of my 30s. So learning money, learning all those things is a skill. It's a skill that I didn't have, and then once I had it, my life changed, right? So everything that we say it all the time here, whatever it is you're going through right now, once you master it, your whole life changes.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I think one of the hardest things for me as far as all that goes was the learning to fail aspect. Too many kids peak in high school, or they're told that they're good to go. They're told that they're all getting a trophy, especially nowadays. When I was a kid, that the everyone gets a trophy was just barely starting to become a thing. Yeah. Nowadays, it's as pervasive as ever.
We made my son throw away his first participation trophy his first year, because he totally was not good. He was great at looking the other direction when the balls hit to him, and he wasn't in the game. He was 4 years old, and they gave him a trophy for that. And he literally could barely reach the top of the trash can to throw it away. That's a true story. He threw that sucker away. Didn't know why we explained it to him, but the next year he got one that he earned, and he still has that one.
Yeah, I got my first real smackdown. I had it in sports in high school, but I was always striving. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this military thing. I'm gonna be special operations. That was the goal. That was the pie in the sky. Going on my mission, I learned a ton of incredibly valuable lessons about leadership, as far as just a little bit more administrative and how to deal with people.
Well, too, there's a great saying that you can't be a great leader until you've been a great follower first.
Exactly. As you understand what the mission is.
Yeah.
Right. As a missionary, you had a very, very clear objective, very clear. You knew exactly what you were doing, so it was very easy to help. You're just helping convey that to everybody else. You're just hey, this is what we're doing. Here's how we're going to do it.
Right.
But I think the biggest challenge for me was getting into the military, and I went in through the program called the 18 X-ray program, where you go from basic training to airborne school to a program called the Special Operations Prep Course. and then straight into Special Forces assessment selection.
Gotcha.
And I knew I wanted to be a Green Beret because I just liked the mission set. I liked what they did. I liked what they were about, the quiet professionals. So I did that. I went to basic, infantry basic, went to airborne school, and then right after that went to SOPSI, where I ended up breaking my legs. I had a bunch of stress fractures all up and down my legs, and so it put me out for the summer. And then I went back to SOPSI for another month, and then turned around and went straight into SFAS, and didn't get selected.
Okay.
And then
how'd you deal with that?
So there was right at the time, Jocko Willink had put out a video where he's like, "Did you just lose your house? Good. Now you can buy a new house." Like it was kind of silly. Like I remember,
beginnings hide themselves in ends.
right. And so I went back like a month later, stayed in the program, went back like a month later, didn't get selected again. And that time I was like, oh, dude, I did not like that. And so I got off the bus from Camp McCall, went straight to the Special Operations Recruiting Center because they were going to send me to the big Army, and I did not want that. And I was like, hey, get me back out at another selection. I don't care what it is. Like, I want to be kicking doors and doing some high-speed stuff. And they're like, oh, have you ever heard of PSYOP selection? We got this like super high-speed tactical team. They like go out with all sorts of different soft groups. I'm like, done, do it. When can I go? And they're like, well, we got a class in like 3 weeks. I'm like, cool, I'm on it. Like, did everything I needed to do, got my packet submitted, got the class date, went to PSYOP selection, crushed it, didn't get selected.
What?
Yeah, it was. So what they told me, because it's a team-based event, but all selection, they're assessing you every 24/7, everything. They're looking at everything, and it's very physical, but it's all very mental. They're just pushing. They're taking the physical aspect out of it. They want to see exactly who you are at your weakest, most vulnerable, where you're at your breaking point. They want to see what you're made of and what you're going to do in those situations when you have to work with difficult people who aren't about it, and when you have to do very hard things and help motivate other people to do very hard things. Okay. One of the things at SFA, like Team Week, is like 4 days of just beat downs. I mean, you have 100-pound ruck on your back, you're carrying apparatuses, you're getting no sleep, you're just moving miles on miles and miles and miles a day, carrying, like a Jeep. You're pushing a Jeep through the sand out in North Carolina. It sucks. Oh my. And dudes are dropping like flies, and when a guy quits, his load is not taken with him. You have to carry that load. It's coming with you. Man,
that's a big one right there, folks. And I hope you hear what he just said.
And so when I didn't get selected the last time, what they told me was like, hey man, you did good, but you're just a little too aggressive for what we're looking for in the program right now. I'm like, oh, so you freaking aggressive. I was about to reach over that table and strangle him, but yeah.
There is a maturation process.
Yes.
That has to happen because, again, leadership comes with great responsibility, and how you handle all those things, right? It's a big deal. And they were probably spot on at the time, weren't they?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was, and some of it was unfortunate. Some of it, a lot of guys will say when they get kicked out, when they fail special operations courses, oh, the cadre screwed me over. And it's like, look, bro, either it was God's plan, it wasn't meant to be, or you sucked.
As a professional athlete, looking back, if I had the mindset and just the basic thought process that I have now, I would have been a much better player. They were totally right with everything they said about me back in the day, except for the medical part, right? Mm-hmm. I was healthy, but mature wise, nah.
Yeah.
No way. I was 26, 27 going on like 18, man. Maybe. You know what I mean? Maybe. So I had a long way to go.
Yeah, this definitely, getting non-selected. I spent 104 days in the special operations pipeline just getting beat down, like at Camp McCall. That's where they do like all the SF.
Okay.
On the Army side of things at Fort Bragg, and just got beat down for like 104 days and nothing came of it, and I was so ticked. But it took a few months of kind of coming to terms with my situation and where I was going. I ended up in the 82nd Airborne in an infantry company, shooting and looting, jumping out of planes and parachuting,
So what you just said, 104 days of agony, right?
Pretty much.
And you didn't get the job, right? So what we found in our young business owners that thrive is their ability to just constantly get back up, learn from that experience, and grow to the next chapter. And they usually land right where they're supposed to land. When you start feeling sorry for yourself, the gift is the lesson, right? And that's when you look back. My favorite part of the season was the teammates, the fans, but I love the training in the off season and because the camaraderie too through that and just the personal growth, because in the games it was just testing what I had trained for. Mm-hmm. So the training for me was, I think Kobe Bryant even said that's the best part. That's the gift. Yeah,
it was pretty difficult showing up, and because at the time, all the dudes that I was coming there with, going to the 82nd with, we were right in the same boat as me, and so you have all these boys that you've just been grinding with, and then you all failed together, and everyone's trying to pick up the pieces. And what I determined was, just because I wasn't a part of a tier 1 organization didn't mean I couldn't be a tier 1 individual.
Oh, so. And let me, a little disclaimer, I'm not comparing anything that a business owner goes through or even I went through in sports to what you guys went through, because it's not even close. However, the lessons are very similar, right?
Absolutely. I think what it comes down to is just adaptability.
Oh, yeah, man. That's right.
You just got to trust in yourself, trust in your circumstances and your ability to overcome those, and then to see it through. And there's no better feeling than being used to losing and then winning.
Bam.
It's so gratifying, and I've been very fortunate to have a couple of wins lately where I'm just like, oh, this looks good on me.
That's right.
I really like this. This is great.
Right.
And a lot of it, all of it, comes from two things: my mission and my military service. It's been incredibly trying. It's been incredibly difficult, having to deal with leadership, having to deal with people who didn't see things my way, who played politics in a lot of situations that did not benefit me, but still having to be like, okay, well, guess what? It doesn't matter what the politics are right now. I'm in Iraq. I have a job to do. I got to get it done. Otherwise, things are either going to get worse. Things aren't going to get better if I don't get anything done. I can't stay stagnant here.
So we've talked a lot about, you're an Eagle Scout combat veteran. You served you were deployed in Iraq for 9 months, right?
Yeah, it was a weird time to be deployed too. We deployed in May of 2020, June 2020 into 2021. So COVID had just kind of started when we left. Yeah. And then really exacerbated, the whole COVID situation got exacerbated while we were gone. And so we were just kind of checking it out from overseas, kind of like a third party position.
You guys were out of the loop, I guess.
Kind of out of the loop. The first half of deployment, we were up in the northern region of Iraq and Kurdistan. And that half, COVID wasn't a thing. After the second half, COVID was a thing, but we had already gone by then down to, we had spent some time in Kuwait and then went back up to Al-Assad, which is kind of central in between Syria and Baghdad. Okay. Doing a QRF mission set. So we were just we had a team ready to go 24/7. If anything popped off, people needed to get bugged out of a situation, and did some light air patrols and stuff like that. Nothing crazy, but
my a previous guest and a buddy of mine, Cameron Harmon, served over there, and he told some stories on his episode that were, I mean, it's just, we're here. We don't. Yeah. I mean, come on, man. What do we don't know a lot about anything really that's going on over there, and I'm sure everybody has a lot of opinions, and those opinions are based on just the knowledge that they got, right? And if they don't have the right knowledge or enough knowledge, opinion's probably off.
Honestly, I don't think anybody, even over there, has any knowledge about what's going on over there. It's there's a lot of things that people could speculate as to purpose and practice as to what's going on, but at the end of the day, we were just over there doing our jobs. and watching out for each other. That was the biggest priority. We were fortunate. We were fortunate to not have. We were fortunate for my mother's sake, I should say.
That's
that
right.
Nothing too crazy happened over there. We stayed relatively safe. We got the job done. We got all the boys home, and it was a good day.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations to all you guys. How did your I'm sure your mom was probably a nervous wreck with you over there.
She's been.
So she had you there. Husband is out in the field as well.
Yep.
Right, working with bad guys.
Yep.
And so, holy crap, dude.
And then she had 4 other kids to worry about and a grandbaby to worry about.
Wow.
It was a time.
So which in relation to the family, which child are you? Are you
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest. All right.
Oldest of 5.
Oldest of 5. Man, that's incredible. That was one of the things I was blown away when talking to your dad was, I know what it's like having 2, and trying to balance everything and be successful. And you're up against guys. You're competing against guys in the business world that maybe don't have kids, that aren't married, that don't have a reason to go home, and they work. So I was having to accomplish as much in half the day, half the hours as they would, and one, you become very innovative when you do that, and it can be done. And my family was never going to be an excuse to fail, or come up short.
Yeah, I think my dad tells me this all the time, and I've heard many fathers speak of this, but you kind of have like an elevation of drive to just be that provider. Like your that caveman instinct kind of kicks in when you get married, just a little bit. Like, oh, okay, like I got a household to keep in order now.
That's right.
And then after that first kid, it's like, okay, like we're in overdrive now. We're getting it done. Like I don't know what that's like. I'm still prospecting.
It's the best, bro. It's the best. It's the greatest gift.
I'm looking forward to it. I've got some, I got some ideas to reinvent the wheel here. It's gonna really change things up.
Well, that's how innovation starts, right? So, you're acting as the CEO of Fear Not Do Right, and then you're the host of the podcast as well, right?
Yes.
So, how long is the podcast? Talk to me about the podcast. How long has it been around? How many episodes you guys done? What's next for it? All that kind of stuff. What's the 30,000 foot vision look like for that?
So honestly, I'm not saying that there's a 30,000 foot vision. I'm just saying that I'm just going to keep going. There's no limit. There's no limit to where it's going to go. I don't know where it's going to go. I had no idea it would even get to this point.
Right. Isn't that cool?
It's been so amazing. So this week we just posted, I just uploaded, just put up the 10th episode of the podcast. So
that's big, dude. Congratulations. That's a milestone, man.
Yeah, it's been great.
That gets a hit right there, baby.
Yeah. I started it in June of this year, and I wanted to start the podcast for one, to kind of just put some weight behind the Fear Not Do Right brand. Let people know, kind of give people something that they could, okay, I know here's the Fear Not Do Right brand. People wear it. Sheriff Lamb's wears it. Cade Lamb wears it. Okay, cool. But what is this brand really about? What is it representing? When I buy a product, what is it that I'm representing when I rep it? So I wanted to give it something, give it some weight, something that people could, a laurel to rest upon.
Right.
And what really inspired it though was earlier this year, late 2021, early 2022. Is I had an opportunity to go to a couple of political events that were very interesting. I went to an event in Arizona with a lot of youth and a lot of high-profile individuals where they were talking about political issues and all these social issues, and it was definitely conservative based. And my dad spoke at it and stuff, and it was a tremendous event. But as everyone was talking about these issues, they just talked about them, and they just spoke about the issue. Yeah, it's like okay. And it was a little weird, and I was like, okay, it was my first exposure to anything like that. Okay. And then a few weeks later, I had an opportunity to go to one in Georgia with a little bit higher echelon of individuals as far as that arena is concerned. A lot of former senators and congressmen. I had an opportunity to meet Vice President Pence and hear him speak, and that's when it really like kind of clued into me. I'm like, they were just talking, just talk, all talk. And, people would be like, China there's a problem with China. What are we going to do about China? And I'm like, that's a good question. What are you going to do about China? And they wouldn't say anything. They would just circle talk it. They would just make circular points all day long. And then they would just kind of, pat each other on the back for stuff that they weren't doing. They say, well, we've done this and this. And I'm like, yeah, but what did that actually do?
Right.
It's like in that Matt Walsh documentary when he asks him, he's like, hey, what is a woman? And they're like, well, a woman is someone who defines themselves as a woman. It's like, okay, you know how that doesn't make any sense, right? And so same kind of thing. They were talking about these issues with no solutions.
Gotcha.
And so I wanted to make a podcast. It was around January. I was like, I'm going to do a show. I need to do one. I had a friend. She kind of inspired me to do it. She was like, hey, listen, I know there's a lot out there, but think about this. There's 350 million Americans, and there's only 2 million podcasts worldwide. Mm-hmm. You have an audience. People are going to listen to it. If you have something to say, get it out there, because there's so many people looking for any sort of answer. And I think that it kind of ties into something else, but I wanted to my elevator speech. If I ever get into an elevator with like Kevin O'Leary or Mark Cuban and they're like, hey, what's your podcast about? The Fear Not Do Right podcast is about providing practical kinetic solutions to complex social and political problems in order to enable a more autonomous and independent American people. So
I like it.
We take this problem, right? And whatever the problem may be, or whatever, invite a subject matter expert onto the show where they can talk about, hey, for example, the first episode I had on was Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips with True the Vote. And they're doing a lot of tremendous work with vote integrity, election integrity. And, for someone like myself, I'm 25. I've been just a number on a spreadsheet for the last 5 years for the Army. What could I possibly do about shady politicians rigging elections? What could I do about that? Like, right. That is so far beyond my grasp of influence. Like, there's nothing I could do about that as myself. And so I was fortunate to have them come on the show, talk about what the issues were, what the actual problem was, not just like did you hear about like the vote, like the election was like stolen or whatever. Like, no, let's actually put some articulate points and understand what's going on. And then having them provide what can an average American do today in this next election cycle in their community to directly affect a proactive solution to this problem. And as we've kind of gone through the show, having different people come on and talk about, everyone's got a different perspective, everyone's got a piece, and hopefully it's in a more articulated, they can construct a well articulated point. And most of the time they're just educating me. I don't know anything about anything. It's like, who said it, Plato or Socrates? All I know is that I know nothing.
That's right.
And so it's been great to have these people come onto the show and kind of just like blow my mind with.
It's a great networking tool too, right?
Absolutely. Just cracking eggs of knowledge all over the place.
That's probably the greatest gift that this podcast has brought to me is, I get to hang out with an hour plus with all these amazing freaking people, successful people, talking Hall of Fame athletes, college professors and coaches, and founders of Major League Soccer teams, and just ultimate serial entrepreneurs, man. And they're just a wealth of knowledge. And we get to talk about their journey. I learn something new every single time. And you know what, for that episode, their audience is my audience, right? And I get to convert some of those. And I would have I'm sure that through your folks, we could have a connection, but outside, like, this magnified that. You know what I'm saying? Because I had a reason to bring you in when you're in town. It's a great networking tool. Everybody that owns a business should have a podcast. I'm a big believer in that, big time.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it's one of those things too where it really does provide that it is the perfect vehicle for a wealth of knowledge. Where, one of the podcasts that I follow is the Faxon blog. Faxon is a manufacturer of rifle barrels, and they got some really cool projects. But any successful podcast is only about 2-3 inches wide and about 2 miles deep. And whatever that perspective is that podcast can provide, that's what people go to listen to. If for any listeners that are looking to start a podcast. So, if you can identify what that niche is and what you're providing to people, people are going to come.
That's right.
If you got a hunting podcast, guess what? People who need advice on hunting will find your podcast. If you have if you have the Hitstreak, people are going to come and they're going to find this podcast, and they're going to be inspired. They're going to find that the knowledge that they're looking for in this 2 Mile Deep podcast.
It's crazy. We're in all 50 states and like 15 countries. Like, it's awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible!
Congratulations! It's unbelievable. All right. So, and all the credit goes to my amazing guests, but more importantly, Jim and the rest of the team that are just freaking killing it. Jim's off camera over here. We call him the Slice, Jimbo Slice. But boy, they do a killer. You got to have a team, man. You got to have a team getting it done, because you can't do it all. And the reason that this is such a high quality production, and the reason that the guests get treated so well, is because the team is amazing. The Hit Lab creative team, as we call them, they are amazing.
I mean, it's an expression as old as time. There's no I in team.
That's right.
And that's one of the, again, back to the military, it's like you cannot do anything without a team. If you're in a firefight, you need a team. You cannot win a firefight by yourself unless you're just like some freak of nature. Unless you're a fictional character in a Tom Clancy book, you will lose a firefight by yourself every single time. Fire without movement is a waste of ammo. Movement without fire is suicide. And so you need to have a support by fire that's going to help you maneuver, and you need a maneuver element to take out whatever it is you're trying to bust down.
That's right.
And it's just that set piece, move piece, set piece, move piece. And in business, you have to have people who can support you as you make maneuvers, and you have to be able to be willing. It's not as glamorous all the time, but be able to help other people maneuver as well. Because that's just, it's like they say, a rising tide lifts all boats.
That's right.
And
come on,
you gotta give what you get.
Dude, you're bringing the noise, baby. I love it. So, first of all, it's folks, this is Cade Lamb, host of the Fear Not Do Right podcast. You can find him on social, cade.r.lamb, also Fear Not Do Right, on basically all social media platforms. Podcast is streaming everywhere, yes?
Yes, it is. Except for YouTube. We got kicked off of YouTube already.
I'll talk to you about that. I can help you with that, right? So, but yeah, man, and that's the only risk when you are using, basically I look at social media as like I'm renting space from them, and they're the landlord, and they can take it back whenever they want. So it's the purpose is to get them off there and bring your audience with you somewhere else where you're the landlord, right? So that's the way. But so everywhere but YouTube right now, but it'll be back, I'm sure, at some point.
Eventually.
That's right. So one last question for you, man. Like, how do you feel? Like, you're 25 years old. So some people would say, I mean, as a matter of fact, as far as you can still be on, if you weren't on your parents' insurance at this point in time. So you don't get kicked out into the full real world until you're 26 years old. So some would say you are still a portion of America's youth, right? So I think mentally and maturely, you are way ahead of your time. What would be what advice would you give those young kids, those young Americans, especially the ones that are aspiring, that feel called to follow in the footsteps of the brave people like you?
Shut up and listen. Everything that you want to do in life, someone's already done it, and they've done it well. So use that as a resource. Watch their example, and always stay positive about it.
That's the key right there.
Everything's gloomy doomy. Everything, you got to get away from the social media. Once you cease being an end user of social media and you start using it as a tool for your business, for whatever it is you're trying to do, right? You start to see that separation. You start to use it less. It's crazy. The more I post and the more engaged I am with social media, with my businesses, with my personal account, with my brand, the less distracted I am by it.
Right.
The more separated. It's like, okay, I don't need to do work right now. I'm just going to put this off here. And as far as staying positive, it's like, dude, everything is covered. What I always continually tell myself, with all the bad, the worse things get, this is going to sound crazy. The worse things get, it almost inspires hope in me, because Newton's third law, to every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The worse things get, the better things are getting. You're not seeing it, but you have to know and trust that it's going to get better, and that it's going to be better, and that the equal amount of good is happening to whatever bad you're seeing out there.
There wouldn't be good without evil. Wouldn't be light without dark. And, there's two sides to that. The evil and the dark's always trying to pull you in that direction. And so when I think it was Steve Harvey I heard say, if the devil isn't working on you, it's because he's right where he wants you to be. You're right where he wants you to be, right? So when those bad things are happening, the bad's doing work, man. They're trying to bring you down and bring you back, right? So that was actually a lot of the hate that I've ever had came from a clip where we were talking about my pastor. The day my wife and I got married, we got saved the same day. He met us at the end of the Mr. and Miss Nick Hyder, and you walk out the middle, and somehow he beat us to the front. And he just said, "Hey guys, that was the greatest decision you could have made, accepting Jesus Christ." And we had a kid already, just solidifying our relationship. And he said, but like the bad times are coming, because there's a opposite side of this that's not happy with the decisions you made today. So and sure enough, like things at the house broke down, cars broke down, bad things happened at work, everything. And we were able to, but what was on the other side of that was amazing.
And the other thing I would also tell, especially the youth, is that I'm actually wearing a shirt right now. You can get this at fearnotdoright.com, but no compromise with evil.
Boom.
And what I think that means is there's a parable that I like. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what the official title is. But a man, he's awoken up he's awakened in the middle of the night, and the Lord comes to him and he's like, "Hey, there's this rock out here. I need you to go push this rock up this hill." This guy's like, "Okay, I'm going to go push this rock." And this guy goes out. He's all ready to go, and he goes and he starts just pushing everything he possibly can into this rock. He's like, "God told me to push this rock. I'm going to push this freaking rock." And goes out every single day, day after day, all day, sun up, sun down. He is pushing against this rock as much as he can. And eventually, the devil comes up and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing pushing against this rock? This rock has not moved an inch since you've started pushing. You've been out here for weeks. You've been out here for months. Rock hasn't moved an inch. What are you doing?" And the man, he gets discouraged. He's like, "Man, what am I doing?" And so he's praying. He's like, "Lord, what am I doing pushing against this rock? You told me to push against this rock. It's not moving." He's like, the Lord comes to him. He's like, "Look, I don't need you to move the rock. I can move the rock. I need you to push against the rock, because look at what that pushing against that rock has done for you. Your hands are calloused and strong. Your back is strong. You're tan. You're fit, and you're ready for whatever I have to throw at you now." And when it comes to doing the right thing, when it comes to fearing not and doing right, it's almost all the time it's going to feel like pushing against a rock, especially with everything that we see nowadays. It's like, dude, how can we push against all of this adversarial, force that's coming at us? But all that is just preparing us for the next thing that's going to come at you. It's chastening you. It's preparing you. It's training you for that hard thing that you don't know is coming, but you're going to be ready for. That's what fear not do right means.
There you have it, folks. fearnotdoright.com. They do have a lot of great apparel, including this amazing hat that those of you that are watching with us today, that you can see right there. I know my son loves his. Your dad sent me home with a couple gifts last week, and we've been rocking them, baby. I love it. And on social, Cade.R.Lamb, and also Fear Not Do Right on the social media platforms. The American Patriot, the son of an American Patriot, and Sheriff Mark Lamb, the American Sheriff, an Eagle Scout, a combat veteran, and now businessman. Now, you're not done serving, right? You're still going to, you're leaving here, headed somewhere. Where are you going next?
So I'm headed to Fort Bragg right now. I'm going to be just wrapping things up there, finishing some paperwork, packing my stuff up, throwing it in a U-Haul, and heading back to good old Arizona.
There you go, man. There you go. Well, brother, you've, again, for 25 years old, your resume is quite impressive, dude, and I'm excited to see all the good that you're going to be doing in this great world in your lifetime. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
Fight the good fight. Don't quit. No one's ever gotten ahead by quitting.
That's right. That's right, man. That's right. Well, once again, folks, Cade Lamb, the host of the Fear Not, Do Right podcast, Eagle Scout, combat veteran, and businessman, man. Congratulations on everything you've done so far, brother. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of The Hit Streak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. We'll see you next time. God bless.